Hi, I'm Major Michelle Curran, Thunderbird 5, the lead solo for the Air Force Thunderbirds, and welcome to Girls in Aviation Day 2020. I talk to people all the time who saw the Thunderbirds when they were little kids, and that was their aha moment, and they knew they wanted to, go fly jets or just pursue aviation in general at that point. I unfortunately didn't go to any air shows the entire time I was growing up. It was a small town in Wisconsin and just didn't really have access to it. But I was always an adventurous kid. I wanted to travel, and there wasn't a huge history of military service in my family, but my grandpa had served back in World War II. He was an officer in the Navy, and I was just fascinated by his Navy trunk full of uniforms and letters he had written to my grandma, and the pictures of the Pacific, and just that sense of adventure that kind of comes with that. So that led me to pursue Air Force ROTC specifically and getting a scholarship. And then once I did, I just kind of looked at the career paths available, and I was like, what would really fulfill my desire for something exciting, something challenging? And pursuing a pilot slot just really stuck out among the career fields available. And I ended up getting one, and now I'm here flying for the Thunderbirds. The first one probably is my dad, and he's the biggest one, again, with my grandpa being in the Navy, and he really has a similar personality to mine and fostered my sense of adventure, my love for the outdoors, my desire to seek out challenges. And he was actually the one that suggested Air Force ROTC as a way to pay for college, and I didn't know anything about it until he brought it up. So that's kind of, as a child, that set me up for this path. But then once I was in the Air Force, it's really been other women in aviation, and there's not a ton of them in the Air Force. And then especially as you get into more specific parts of the Air Force and fighters in the Thunderbirds, that group gets smaller. Obviously we're trying to grow it, but because the group is so small, everyone really knows each other, and it's a really tight knit group, and everyone will go out of their way to help you and mentor you when you're a young lieutenant. And so I had one female instructor pilot back in pilot training, and she was on a track to go to fighters. She was a first assignment instructor pilot, so she stuck around after she did her own flight training, but she was eventually going to go on to fly F-16s. And so that was just really great. We hit it off and had a really close relationship, and she was a mentor through that tough year of training. And then once I was at my first assignment, there were a couple older women who were captains and majors and flight commanders in the other squadron when I was stationed in Japan. And they really took me under their wing and, asked me what challenges I was facing. And they were just someone to really voice any concerns to that had been there and done that. And it was just really nice to have that kind of support network. And then the last one I'll talk about is Mother Hubbard, who was Thunderbird 8 back in the day when I was in pilot training. And that was actually the first time I ever saw the Thunderbirds perform, was when they came to Columbus Air Force Base. And she was the narrator and the advanced pilot. And I just remember being so excited to see a woman on the team who was a pilot. And I was actually too intimidated to go talk to her, which is really funny now because we're pretty good friends and we've done some outdoor stuff together because we have similar hobbies. But then she's just someone I can always call, to bounce ideas off of. And she's actually went on to be a squadron commander of an F-16 squadron here recently. So it's been different people throughout my career, but it primarily has been other women, just because we can relate on such a high level to experiences that are a little bit different than what the guys face. It's obviously a challenging path, especially at the beginning, going through all the training. I think everyone struggles at different points during that. I think personally, the hardest single assignment or point of my career was probably my first assignment, being stationed overseas in Misawa, which is way up in northern Japan, kind of in the middle of nowhere, so pretty remote. So that's quite the change from growing up in Wisconsin, a small town, and then going to pilot training in Columbus, and then eventually off to Japan. So you have that little bit of isolation and culture shock, but I mean, it was amazing to live overseas. I would definitely do it again. But also, as there were two of us that were women in my squadron, And the other one had actually been in my F-16 training course with me. So we were good friends and knew each other. And I'm just so happy we're in the squadron together. But there hadn't been any female pilots in our squadron in quite a while. And we showed up within about a month of each other. And it was kind of a transitional point in the Air Force, I think, back in 2012, 2013, where the Air Force was trying really hard to diversify pilots, especially females, and trying to make sure that the culture in the Air Force was conducive to that. And so you find yourself in a position where you're just trying to learn everything just like everyone else. You're trying to become a wingman, you're trying to get combat qualified, and that's a lot in general. But then you also are trying to find your footing with what's my personality going to be in the squadron? Like what will I be viewed as a fighter pilot? I'm, getting my call sign. This is my reputation that's going to follow me through the rest of my career. What am I okay with as far as comments or jokes? And you don't want to be someone who's just like, feels like they're walking on eggshells all the time and is super uptight, makes your friends who are your squadron mates uncomfortable. But at the same time, you bear a burden to kind of set the standard for people that are going to follow after you. So I didn't have anyone that was singling me out or anything like that. It was just kind of this burden I had on myself where I felt like I had a lot of responsibility to kind of set the tone for what I would be known as and my reputation for the rest of my career, because the fighter community is small. There's quite a few of us, but it's definitely small. Everyone knows everyone at this point. Once you're on your third assignment, anywhere you go, there's people that are going to know you. So it was kind of a lot of pressure, along with it's just trying to drink from a fire hose, learning all the tactics when you're new, and just kind of trying to prove yourself in that setting. Flying in the Thunderbirds is definitely different than flying I've ever done in the F-16 and previous assignments. It's a lot more stick and rudder technical, and a lot less operating sensors and stuff like that, which is what you're doing primarily in the tactical world. So it's demanding on the body for sure, especially the solo profiles and the left solo. I do the max turn. I do vertical rolls, which is where I come in at 200 feet and about 500 knots, and then pull straight up, and I'll hit over 8 Gs usually in that pull to vertical. And then in the max turn, I'll usually hit the mid 8s in that, and then sustain anywhere from 7.5 to 8.5 throughout that entire 360-degree turn. So you get used to Gs, but they definitely never feel great. They're still pretty uncomfortable. But what they feel like is, I think most people have been on some sort of roller coaster or fair ride or something like that. They have that gravitron that spins really fast and pins you to the wall. Or, on a roller coaster, when you go around a corner, you have that kind of centrifugal force that pushes you sideways or into the seat. It's like that, but just on a much more extreme level. When you're getting really above 7 Gs is where it starts to get pretty uncomfortable, because if you weigh 100 pounds at 9 Gs, which is the most we pull, you're going to feel like 900 pounds. So you're just being squished into the seat. And I'm sure everyone has seen videos of people in their training where they go in the centrifuge, which is a capsule at the end of a really long arm that spins around, and there's a video in there and your face is just melting. You look like you're all of a sudden 120 years old. So your whole body feels like that. And then people ask a lot about how it feels to fly that fast. And normally when we would hit speeds like that in other jobs, you're at higher altitudes, right? So you might be up 20,000 feet, 30,000 feet, and you don't usually have a frame of reference. So it doesn't really feel any different. You just watch the Mach number tick up from 0.9 eventually till it hits 1.0, and you're like, oh, I just went supersonic, broke the speed of sound. There's not anything huge that happens in the aircraft at that point. But for the Thunderbirds, since we're down at 150 to 200 feet off the ground, you definitely have a frame of reference for that speed. So especially when you go to show sites that you're not super familiar with, and it's that first day out there practicing, and for me, all of a sudden I'm upside down, at 450 miles an hour, and there's cars passing by, or there's telephone wires, or there's cows in a field. It's different at every show site. And so it can be a little bit distracting to see that, but it's really cool to have that frame of reference just for that speed that we really get with this team specifically. Vertical rolls is definitely my favorite maneuver. It's just really stunning to the crowd. They're always kind of in awe on that one, but it's fun to fly too. So like I said, come in about 200 feet, and I'm trying to hit, our limit is 0.94 Mach. So honestly, I'd be at that ideally. The more speed I have, the more rolls I can do before I have to recover the aircraft. So fast, and then right before show center, turn my smoke on, and then it's just about an 8G pull up to vertical. And once I get there, I actually push forward with the stick to stop the nose from tracking. And once it stabilizes straight up, now it's a max deflection aileron roll. So with the smoke on, you get that really cool curly Q that just hangs in the air all the way up. And most of our airspace restrictions at different show sites are up to 18,000 feet. So I'll start the recovery around 15,000 feet to make sure I don't actually go through the top of the airspace. So it's just cool to the crowd. It's fun to climb like that, along with the roll, of course. And it's No Doubt's song sang by Gwen Stefani of I'm Just a Girl. So people really like, watching I'm Just a Girl in the World. And that's all that they'll let me be for the lyrics as I climb up to about 18,000 feet. So I think there's multiple reasons that I like that, and the song choice for sure. I am on my show suit right now, so it has our patch, which has been pretty much the same since the team started back in 1953. The only thing that's changed is the silhouettes, which are hard to see on here, but the silhouette of an F-16 right now are 4 of them for the Diamond, but that's evolved as the aircraft has changed over the years. And then obviously I have my number on here, which you're not crazy, it is upside down. And it's upside down on my jet as well. And that's specific to the number 5 position, the lead solo position, because in that position on the team, we fly upside down the most of anyone. So if you've ever been to one of our shows and seen the Calypso or the Reflection, which is the 2 jets, like if this was the tail, they look like they're touching. I'm the one that's upside down. And then same for the Reflection. So I spent a lot of time during the show hanging upside down from the lap belt. So that's interesting, takes some getting used to, but that's why the number's upside down. I pass the crowd, it's right side up if you're a spectator. And then call signs, mine is MACE, M-A-C-E. And there's a long tradition of call signs, and it's really a cool kind of heritage tradition thing that fighter squadrons carry on. And you usually will get it at your first combat unit once you're done with MQT, which is mission qualifying or mission qualification training. So at that point, you're a combat wingman, you could deploy and go off and fly on the wing of a flight lead and make like major operations. So you've kind of proven yourself a little bit at that point, and you've been in a squadron long enough to do some embarrassing things really that they can make fun of you for, and usually name you after something you did like that. A lot of them are acronyms or they're plays on people's last names. So there's usually a funny story that goes with it. But there's also a tradition that we only tell the story in person over a shared drink usually. So if anyone runs into me at a show, maybe I can tell you what it actually stands for. Mine's not too crazy of a story, but I'll leave you with a little mystery there. That there's going to be obstacles, and there's honestly never a perfect flight. Everyone wants to have a perfect flight. Obviously in the Thunderbirds, where we record everything, we watch our tapes of our HUD, our heads up display, excuse me, along with video from the ground. We're analyzing everything, and it's like that in a lot of other military squadrons as well. And you always want to be right on airspeed, right on altitude, right on time if it's for a flyover. And we do everything we can to make that happen, but you're never going to have a perfect flight. So it's really just developing that persistence and that grit to keep, pursuing that, even though it's kind of sometimes an unattainable goal. And that when something does go wrong, dust yourself off, take a step back, and don't let it get you down. Like, it's only going to make you a better pilot in the end. It's only going to make you a stronger person in the end. So that's really the biggest lesson from my entire aviation career, from the very beginning when I first soloed all the way through the team that's still that's still a really good philosophy to live by. And then I think most of us tend to do this, be your own harshest critic, right? That's why we pursue things like aviation, and that's what makes us better. But also realize that you are your own harshest critic. I have to remind myself of that even now. I fly a flight and I'm like, oh man, I was just a little bit wide in that roll and I landed. I'm just not happy with the show because of that. And I talked to my husband who was there, or I talked to someone else who was on the ground and they're like, it looked perfect from the ground. You couldn't tell. And I'm still like, it should have been better. I should have been closer. I should have, I was a little bit after. I should have added the power in sooner. I should have added the rudder in sooner. And I have to realize that my perspective on it is not the same as the spectator's perspective on it, and take a step back and be like, okay, I'm gonna work to still fix that. But also you can't just let yourself get into that spiral of self-doubt and just be like, I'm never gonna get it, I'm never gonna be perfect, because you aren't gonna have a perfect flight, but you're just gonna continue to get better. That's really been up in the air with COVID going on. And I wish I had a set, like, we will be at this show at this location at this date. Normal show season is about 35 different locations for us. And I think right now, with everything that's canceled, we're down to 6 or 7 that are still on our schedule. And more of those will probably cancel as stuff starts to kind of shake out over the next few months. So you can look at our website and watch the shows kind of ebb and flow on there. But if you follow the Thunderbirds on their Facebook page or their Instagram, the team's social media, they're pretty good about updating as cancellations happen. But the big news is that because this show season has been cut so short, almost non-existent, that we're all staying for another year next year. So this is supposed to be my second and last year on the team, but I'll actually continue to be number 5, the lead solo, through the entire 2021 season as well. I think this applies to whether it's the civilian side or the military side, and really any career in aviation where you might look at your peers and there's not a lot of people that look like you, is to be willing to get outside your comfort zone and pursue something that's difficult. And that sounds cliche, but I look back at my career and the times when I felt uncomfortable doing something and I was raising my hand to, go after this upgrade, or raising my hand to go, I went TDY, which is basically a work trip for us that's not a deployment, to Poland to instruct their students in the F-16. And they don't have any women flying the F-16 in that country. So I knew I was going to stick out and I knew it was going to be challenging. And it was outside my comfort zone for sure. I was a brand new instructor pilot, but those things have been the most rewarding in my career when I look back over the last 12 years. And I think that's going to apply on the military side or on the civilian side, as being willing to take kind of that leap of faith and really believe in yourself and pursue something that's difficult, that's outside your comfort zone.